We'll incorporate them. Okay.
Sounds like a plan, Dr. Pat. Sounds like a plan.
Good. Okay. So I want to welcome you all to come for coming. And we are going to talk about atomic habits. But most of what we're going to do, we're going to talk about habits. So even if you haven't read the book, that's fine, because we can, you'll get something out of this, I would think, anyway. If you have read the book, I'd like to know what you got out of it, or what you found helpful, what you found BS. Any reactions to the book?
Well, I just started reading it, and I tried to sort of, page through, but you've got to read it in order to find out his ideas. I didn't quite get the cue. How do you really get yourself to do a good habit?
Okay. Well, there are a lot of things that he talks about that about how to get started and all, but I think that it helps probably if you have a habit in mind when you're reading the book. It's probably helpful, because then you're kind of applying it rather than just in general, but basically a lot of the things that, I think are that he says that are, kind of important. One of the things is make it really, really easy. Now, and that's why he calls it atomic habits, because you're really bringing it down. In some cases, it gets a little, silly. I think that, if you want to be, one of the things I think did feel was very helpful was like the idea of identity. So if you're a smoker and you want to be a non-smoker, you have to start thinking of yourself as a non-smoker. Or if you want to be a runner, because that's one of the things that he says about running is, put out a pair of shoes at night. And that's all you have to do the first time. You put out your running shoes. You don't have to wear them, you don't have to put them on. And each time you get to do a little bit more, so that, you're basically, you're developing the habit in increments, in small increments. So he talks about making it easy. He talks about making it attractive. He goes a lot into, rewards and things like that, kind of behavioral science, which at a kind of a theoretical level, which I'm not sure is all that helpful, that part of the book. But he is, I think there's a lot of practical, information there. He talks about accountability partners if you're trying to get something done. It does help sometimes to talk more in terms of specific, specific types of habits, because, depending on whether you're trying to make a habit or break a habit, we're talking about kind of different behaviors and things that have to be done. So I see we've had other people join us. Any comments or reactions to this book? What your feelings are? What you got out of it? Anything helpful that you got out of it?
I think this book is life-changing for me.
Okay.
That's what I think. I mean, so many different ways that I can't even explain. But I mean, in two ways. One was it talks about your habits need to reinforce your identity.
Right. Yeah.
And mine are not. And the biggest example of this was, and maybe you can address this as you talk today, is I'm an artist, and I program my brain to say I'm an artist who's not painting right now. The thing is that, and so the thing was, it's given me, I downloaded this cheat sheet that he has.
Uh-huh.
And it has all these tools that you can use. I gravitated towards the 2-minute rule, at least get your paints out or do something.
Yeah, I was just talking about getting your running shoes out. If you want to be a runner,
yeah,
put out your running shoes. That's all you have to do the first time. Yeah.
Yes, but first I have to change my attitude. I'm an artist, period, who loves to paint. And then the second thing is I have to just like start somewhere with some habit. And I'd like to start with painting, but if I can't, do the 2-minute rule at least and do something. So, I mean, it just, that's just one example, but I thought this was a phenomenal book.
You know, one of the things I might suggest, Beverly, is that if I mean, the one thing that you really want to change is that you really want to be, you know, paint again, right? But you might want to start with something a little bit more mundane or a little bit more concrete or, you know, easier to do. Like, I mean, like a different, I'm talking about like a different habit. You know, before you tackle this, try the method on something that's, you know, like I want to go grocery shopping the same day every week, or, you know, I want to, I want to walk for 5 minutes a day or something, whatever, you know, something that's a little bit like less overwhelming than I want to get back to painting, you know?
Well, in the 5-minute walk, that's good too, because, you know, in the book, he also says, well, you can miss one day, but don't miss 2 days.
Don't miss two, yeah.
And the thing is that I just did that, you know, it rained one day and then the next day I just didn't go out. And that's a great way to start. Thank you, Pat.
Yeah, that's just, you know, there are just so many things, and I've read a lot of things about habits, and I'll send you handouts that I've had for other meetings that, you know, like that basically, you know, are not based on this book, but are also very helpful. Another book that people find very helpful is Better Than Before by Gretchen Rubin, where she, you know, really, you know, drills down on habits also. And I think I have a habits bibliography to send. So if you really want to get into the weeds, you know. So,
well, one of the things, though, I have to be careful, as I was very aware as I was reading the book, is I'm trying to change maybe too many habits at one time. I don't.
That's yeah. You really, if you're going to do this, it's probably better to just do one at a time. And then one of the things that I do think he talks about habit stacking, and that is really very effective. If you think, you know, and I've some people who have been in the group for a while know. I've talked about this all the time. Think about your morning routine. You do the same thing in the same order every day, probably, you know, like I get up in the morning, I go to the bathroom, I take my shower, I get dressed, I collect the laundry, I go down, I put my coffee on, I gather the recyclables and the garbage if it's garbage day. And I do the recyclables, I do the garbage, I put the laundry in, I come back, my coffee's ready. Okay. And that's like, and I do my crossword puzzle every single God blessed day. So, you know, and you probably have a similar routine in the morning or a similar routine in the evening where you're, you know, and you're kind of stacking your habits. So if you want to start a new habit, sometimes the best way is to tag it onto something you already do. So like, and he talks about this in the book, like after I do such and so, something you already do every day, I'm going to do this new habit. And that's a way, like where one thing triggers another, is sometimes a very helpful way to get started on a habit, you know, because then it just becomes where you don't think about it. And that's the point of habits, really, is that you don't think about it. So, you know, that's another way to start here. Anybody else have comments on the book? None? Okay, I'm going to have to do a lot of tough sledding here today. I thought you guys were going to carry the day for me. Okay. All right, let's see. All right, I'm trying to think of, I have some of the, I got to put this where I can write down who's here. Okay. He talks at the beginning of the book, and this is interesting because I've never used this myself, but like the idea of getting 1% better every day. And I don't know if you remember the story that he tells at the beginning about the British racing team. Where
that was very interesting, I thought.
Yeah, because he talks about it as compound interest. Like if you can get 1% better every day, you know, how quickly you improve. You know, it's like, what good is 1% going to do? Well, 1% can really make a big difference. If, you know, like if you do 1%, you know, more writing every day, if you want to be a writer, you know, or 1% longer painting for some people, Beverly, who want to paint. Or, you know, so if that, you know, if that's, you know, let's say you're doing something that you would like to do more, you're doing it 10 minutes a day, or you know, whatever, and you just keep improving that. You really have to recognize that that is making a difference. That is establishing a habit, and when this habit is established, it's hard to get rid of. One of the things I think he talks about in the book is if you are used to washing your hands, we taught as a kid to wash your hands after you use the toilet, okay, and he said all of a sudden the water's turned off in the, you know, or you're not getting water to the bathroom like that, you still go and turn that water on. I mean, we probably all have this experience, like the you know, like in a blackout. How many times did you go and flip the light on? Like you walk into a room, you flip the light on. Well, it's not going to go on. It's a blackout, but you do it anyway because, you know, like that's the habit. You walk into the room, it's dark, you turn the light on. And so some habits are just so ingrained. And, you know, that's kind of what we're going for is like not to have to think and make decisions about every little thing, to like things happen automatically, you know. And then, as you know, Beverly said, like the identity, like, you know, change, like, oh, so, you know, I am a person who, you know, does this or that or the other thing. And to begin to think of yourself that way, that's kind of crucial, actually. So anyway, so that was the first thing. Anybody, I was hoping people have comments here. Okay, so focus on systems.
The other thing he mentioned, which I related to, is someone who's, you know, organizes or keeps things clean. Alluded to it, you know, thinking, you know, I am an organized person. I'm a person, you know, I'm doing this task because I'm this person, and I don't think of myself that way. So I think of neatening up as a chore, you know, and you know, he's saying something completely different.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, it's, you know, I don't think that you can change your identity on a broad spectrum of competencies at one time. But if you're trying to change a habit, you have to say to yourself, you know, like, okay, like you might look around and say, you know, like, okay, this place is a wreck. I'm so disorganized. But if you go around saying to yourself, I'm a disorganized person, then you probably will be disorganized. But if you make the attempt to change things and, you know, like just, it's like, okay, I'm going to keep the kitchen clean, you know, yeah, and no commitment for the rest of the house, just the kitchen, you know, I'm going to keep the kitchen clean. And, you know, like I'm a person who keeps my kitchen clean, you know, then you can move on to being an organized person, like overall. But so I think if you can, and it, you know, it's not always easy to do. It's not something we naturally do, like actually try to change your identity. But if you listen to the things that you tell yourself all the time, you know, like I tell myself I'm an anxious person because I am an anxious person. But the thing is, what I have to do is become a more relaxed person. So I need to change what I tell myself. And because it does have an effect. I mean, not a magical effect, not an overnight effect. You know, you also have to try to change your behaviors, but it helps you to change the behaviors if you recognize that you're trying to change your identity. Like, you know, for instance, like a smoker and non-smoker, it's really tough. You know, like somebody who's been smoking for, you know, 30 years or whatever, and decides this is like, you know, this is not the way I want to go. There's a lot of things about smoking I don't like. And there's also the fact that I'd like to live a little longer. And, you know, and so, you know, but you have to change it like, oh, I'm a non-smoker. I'm going to sit in the non-smoking section. I'm going to, you know, I'm not going to have a cigarette. I'm not going to bum a cigarette. I'm a non-smoker. So that will help you. If you can make that shift, it helps you with you know, actually changing the habit. And negative habits are harder, maybe harder to change than adapting a positive habit. He talks about both. And I think it's interesting that he talks about, he kind of in the two different chapters juxtaposes, the behavior, the positive behaviors and the negative behaviors. And I think I'm going to curtail the conversation in the kitchen. Can you just hold this on a second? Okay, guys. You don't want to be in my Zoom meeting, right? Okay, I'm back. I wrote hurt on my husband and my daughter-in-law. Or whooping it up in the kitchen. So, okay. Anybody else have any comments? None? Anybody have a habit they want to change that you'd be willing to share? No. Okay. I thought this was going to be such an interesting evening, but let's see. Okay. All right.
Well, I was trying to drink more water. I've been trying to drink more water for a long time. That seems to be the thing to do.
Right.
And I thought that what I would do is always have a glass of water next to the sink.
Uh-huh.
And then I would keep drinking that glass of water. And then when it was empty, I would fill it up again.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed like a really good idea, but so far I haven't quite made it a habit. Which is
Okay.
what I planned.
Okay. Well, one thing I might suggest is starting with a, like if you have a pitcher, a graduated pitcher, and you can say, okay, I'm going to drink a pint of water this week or something, and if you like your water cold, have it in the refrigerator, but yeah, have the glass out, and every time maybe you switch to a new activity, fill the glass, regardless of where it is. If it doesn't have to be completely empty or whatever, but fill it up. So like if you go to sit down to answer emails, fill up the glass of water. If you start cooking dinner, fill up the glass of water. So that and then when the pitcher's empty, okay, your obligation is done for the day. So you drank your pint, you drank your your quart, or you drank. I don't know if you want to drink a gallon, it's a lot, but you've had what you committed yourself to have. I don't know.
Well, I'll give that a try. No,
I work, but yeah. If you don't like your water cold, leave it out on the counter, and
I think that's a help for me to leave it out.
Yeah.
I don't mind it so cold.
What? You don't mind it so cold? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether that's going to work, but I would say try that, like where so that before you whenever you make a transition, you fill the glass. Because you want to link it to something else. So if you're going to, I'm going to sit down and read the mail, okay, fill up the glass of water.
Right. I'll try that.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing an idea for a habit. Okay. All right. Okay, he talks about a habit scorecard, which was checking what you do, like really writing down the things that you do that are habits. And I think that was kind of an interesting concept. I don't know how, it's a kind of a big task, but thinking about your day, and like I could rattle off the things that I do, my habits, like for a morning, but throughout the day there are, are things that you do, like, if you do your email, then maybe you do something else, or, or if, and also it highlights like the negative habits you want to change, like, oh, I waste time doing X, Y, and Z. I'd like to eliminate that. Or, the section that he had on keeping habits, scorecard, I think was kind of interesting, but it is kind of labor intensive to do that. But it makes you more aware of the things that you are doing, the behaviors that you are like that, and it might highlight for you like, oh, I do this a lot. maybe I should change, like maybe I should start shifting things there because I don't want to do that. Or, I see myself as this, that, or the other thing, but I'm really not doing this thing too much. So, and you want to increase the time spent on, on something else. Okay. Habit stacking, we talked about that. And small changes. He is big on small changes. And I think that that's kind of crucial. I think sometimes, like, okay, starting January 1st, I'm not going to eat a carb and I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week and I'm going to run, every other day. And I'm going to whoa, because that's an awful lot to, like you'll burn out after 2 days of that regimen, right? But if you pick one of those things to start, like, okay, no desserts, like you're not cutting out meat yet, you're not, committing to like hours of exercise, you're not doing, but you're kind of like narrowing it down to like, one little thing. And then when you kind of have that in hand, and you know what, now I don't even want dessert anymore, right? So then you can go on to something else. And you might have a list of behaviors you'd like to change, but the idea is change one thing at a time, go slow. In fact, if it's impossible for you to just cut out dessert, say, I'm going to have like 2 desserts a week or whatever. And, and then maybe then you might decide, I don't need dessert anymore. But, don't bite off more than you can chew, and do what you can handle. You want to be a writer. I mean, there are a lot of people, I am not really one of them, but there are people who think they can write the great American novel or whatever, okay, well, writers really have to write every day. And if they don't write every day, that's, they're really not going to get too far. So, but you only have to write like a page a day, or you only have to write, you have to fill a page, like maybe it's an outline, maybe it's a scene from the beginning of the novel or one from the end of the novel, whatever. But, you have to actually like write every day in order to, to develop the habit. And that's like really the important thing, is develop the habit. And then like once you have a habit of writing every day, or whatever it is you want to do every day, then you can say, okay, I'm going to write longer. I'm going to spend a little more time, or I want to produce a little bit more every day. And kind of withhold judgment on whether the writing is good, bad, or indifferent. Because if you judge yourself too harshly, then you might quit without giving yourself the chance to get better. So so that's something that like doing something every day is fine, and you can start at a minimal level, and not expect too much from yourself in the beginning. Yeah, sure, you have a goal in mind, but you can't really. Goals sometimes hang us up because our goals might be so lofty that we'll never get there, or but that doesn't mean that we can't get a heck of a lot better about things. So that's something that I would think about. It's like, how narrow can you make this to begin? And and then you increase it as you become comfortable and as you know that you're doing it, and those successes, and you have to recognize those as successes, instead of sitting back and saying, oh yeah, I wrote a page a day. Well, what's that? How long would it take me to write a book? And but no, like, you wrote every day this week. Hey, pat yourself on the back, give yourself a cigar, whatever. I don't know, but make yourself, recognize that this is not easy, and you've done it. Yes, it's not where you want to be yet, but it certainly is like a first step on the way to that goal. You're not going to do a 20-mile hike. Get out and do the 5-minute walk. Tomorrow, 10 minutes, maybe, or 5 minutes for this week, 10 minutes for next week. Do whatever you can do. And always remember that it's better than nothing. And that's something that we don't always, we don't cut ourselves enough slack sometimes. Okay, let me see where else I'm. Also, if you guys have any thoughts, please speak up. Okay. make it in, he talks about making things visible and invisible. So if you want to start a habit, you make it visible. You make it like, that's why the running shoes are out by the side of your bed. So you're going to trip over them when you get out of bed in the morning so that you'll go out and run, maybe, or actually put the shoes on and walk outside the door and you're done. But you know, like it makes it, oh yeah, I wanted to run, you know. Also, and I think this is very helpful for negative habits. Make your stimulus invisible. So for instance, you know, like to the extent you can, if you want to lose weight, to the extent that you can, keep out the candy, the snacks, the, you know, the whatever, you know, ice cream, you know, don't buy it in the first place. Don't have it in the house. So that it's not easy to get. It's not like, oh man, oh, I forgot I had this, you know, half-gallon ice cream. And then, like, you know, in a half an hour, it's gone, right? Because you remembered it was in there. It was so good. You know, like, so if you, you know, the same thing with the cigarettes, you know, ditch the cigarettes or, you know, at least hide them so they're not out. You know, sometimes we live with other people who need this stuff, whatever it is, you know, where they want it. And you can't be the police. I'm giving up cigarettes, therefore nobody else can smoke, you know. You can't, that can't be your MO. So but you know, like for yourself, think about ways your environment, because a lot of our habits are you know, we can use our environment to help us or hinder us. When I say I do a load of wash every day, the laundry basket's in my room. I empty the hamper. Well, when I had kids, I emptied lots of hampers in the morning. Every kid had a camper in his room. You know, I go and I bring it downstairs. If I didn't have the laundry basket, if I didn't put the laundry basket in my room at night, I don't know if I would do that, but it's there and then I do it, and it's just automatic that I do it. You know, so think about things. I think one of the things, for instance, smoking in the United States has gone down a lot. I think a lot of it is because places prohibited smoking. You know, if you had to stand outside your building in the cold and smoke, people gave up the cigarettes. Or the thing is, even if they didn't give them up, they were smoking fewer and finally said, why am I doing this? Like, you know, I'm only smoking a couple of cigarettes a day because I can't leave my office to do it. You know, or I can only take somebody smoking, or it's so uncomfortable to smoke, or, you know, I want to be in there drinking with my friends and they throw me out of the bar because because I want to smoke. You know, so, you know, those things do change your behavior. So if you make it as difficult, as uncomfortable, and invisible as possible, that, you know, that helps you change a negative behavior. Positive behaviors, I think it does help a little bit more to think about the goal, but not to emphasize the goal. And James Clear says this, I think repeatedly, is that, you know, you don't focus on the goal as much as the process. Like, think about your goal and then think about how are you going to get there, because that's much more important in a way. Once you then you kind of like almost forget about the goal. You concentrate more on the process, so that you use the process to fulfill that goal eventually. Maybe not even this year, you know, like depending on how high in the sky your goal is, it may take quite a while to do it. But you think about the behaviors that you need to have to get there, and, you know, and then you start working on those behaviors.
One of the most profound things I thought that he said was that everybody has a goal to make more money. Everybody, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and he says, but, you know, the difference is some people put systems in place to actually do it, you know.
Yeah.
That I thought was one of the most profound sentences in the whole book about the goals, you know, because I always have been goal focused.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The goal to make more money. And, you know, and you do have to be goal focused in a way, in terms of, you can't even begin to mold your behavior until you kind of know basically where you want to go. And if you're really focused on making more money, rather than just thinking about, wouldn't it be nice, or I'd like to make more money, or that's a goal of mine, like people say that this is a goal, but they're not doing anything toward getting there. But you could, like look at, you could start learning about investing. You could be looking for a better job. There's a lot of things that you could do to make more money if that was, if you were really serious about that being a goal rather than wishful thinking, So, anyway.
But then he goes on and he says, and I hope you don't think I'm talking too much.
No, please, I want people to talk. Nobody's talking.
Well, but then he goes on and he talks about the difference between motion and action. Like if you want to make more money, he says you can research and plan and study and do all these things, and that's motion. You have the illusion that you're actually moving.
Right.
And you are doing something, but
right.
You're not taking any action towards your goal.
Yeah, and that's true. I thought that was I thought that was a very interesting part of the book too. Is that, like you have to kind of think, like sometimes what we do is almost like procrastination. It looks like we're working on our goal, but we're it's kind of more like procrastination because we're never actually changing things. So, and you still might have to do some of that first. You don't want to be, like, and like, for instance, to make more money, you don't want to really be investing in some cockamamie scheme without doing some research. But but if you just keep researching and researching and researching and not acting, it's never going to get you anyplace. So yes, that's a good point, Beverly. Thank you. Okay. All right. Okay. And then one of the things, when I was talking about habit stacking before, he also says, one of the things he says in the end of chapter 8, apparently, is a pair an action you want to do with an action you need to do. So sometimes that's very helpful, is to, think about, if you want to do something, think about something that you need to do and tie it together some way. Or sometimes it's also good in terms of like rewarding yourself. Like if you want to walk, but you can't seem to get out there, if you like podcasts, it might be a good idea to say, okay, well, that's when I'll listen to podcasts. For me, it's ironing. Like, actually, I don't mind ironing terribly much, but I never watch television unless I'm ironing. So, I limit my television watching by the amount of ironing I have, but I also get to, like, that's like a kind of reward. I never mind ironing because I can watch television. It's the only time I do. So, so if you pair one thing you need to do with one thing you like to do, then that can be, very helpful. Okay. And let's see. Okay. One of the things that I thought was very interesting, and I don't know that I got this the first time I read the book, was we tend to imitate the habits of 3 social groups: close family and friends. And then he says the close, the many, and the powerful. I have heard, and I think you probably have seen this research too, because it's been in the popular press, that people tend to weigh, like if they're overweight or or normal weight or whatever, it's the group. Like their group is very similar in terms of, for instance, like weight, like what's acceptable or what's, what you eat or whatever. You kind of like take on a lot of the characteristics of the group. So if, for instance, you're trying to limit your drinking, all right, you really have to look at your social group and, what's the norm in your social group. And you might want to start changing how frequently you're with them, or even cutting some people out of your social group if you really are serious about, changing something like that, because they do have a big influence on us. Anyway, so but that's something to think about. Like if it's a habit that's common to your group and it's good for you, it's beneficial and you like it and it's good, that's good. That your friends value something and they value reading. So they're always talking about books and whatever. And, like it really challenges you to read more books, and and they, great, terrific. If they're drinking to excess and you like to limit your drinking, then it's, going to be a problem. So, or the same thing with smoking. If you hang out with smokers, that's going to be a terrible temptation to smoke. So you might want to think about, what's the group doing, and how is this helping me or hindering me, for a particular behavior. Let's see. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, this is not, like some of these things that I highlighted here in the summaries. One of the things was highlight the benefits of avoiding a bad habit to make it seem unattractive, because for habits that we want to develop, we have to really think a lot about like why this is an attractive thing, why we want to do it, why we love it, why, like why we love exercising. And actually, if you want to exercise, and if you do exercise and you feel good after you exercise, which is frequent, and you're proud of yourself, take a moment to appreciate that, to think about that, to, revel in the fact that, hey, yeah, I mean, like maybe it wasn't like what some people would consider, a terrific workout. Like, what is this one? She's all excited. She, did 6 reps of this, whatever, but it doesn't matter. You take a minute and think about how good it is for you, and how good you feel about it, and and how successful you've been, and and enjoy that moment. Okay. Okay. All right. Habit formation is a matter of repetition. Okay. You're not going to form, it won't be a habit if it's not repeated. And you're not going to have a habit if you don't make the effort, to get out there and repeat the habit on some kind of a regular basis. I mean, it depends on what the habit is. It might be several times a day, or it might be every day. That's the kind of frequency that we talk about the most. But it could be a once a week habit. It could be, it could be almost anything. But it has to be repeated. And, like you can't just kind of like rest on your laurels after you've done it 5 times and say, okay, I'm I don't eat dessert or whatever. Well, yeah, I mean, you didn't for this week, but you have to keep repeating that if that's the habit that you want to develop. So that's important to think about, that it's not really a habit unless it's repeated, and it's not, it's not going to be ingrained unless it's repeated. Okay. This is create an environment where doing the right thing is as easy as possible. This is kind of the inverse of like hiding the cigarettes kind of thing. If you want to craft, for example, that's something I used to do a lot of, and I don't do anymore. And I'm not saying I miss it terribly, actually. But if you want to be a crafts person, if you want to, handcraft something, or many things, you have to have your materials available. You have to have, it has to be easy for you to set up. If you can spare a room, if you can spare a table where you can leave your things out, that's helpful. So, you want to make it, if it's something that you want to do, you have to make it as easy as possible. If you have to haul a bunch of stuff out, if it's, if you have to go to the store to get what you need before you actually begin work, if you're not going to get it done. So, if you want to exercise, put out the clothes the night before. So in the morning, those are the clothes you put on, and you go out and you exercise. Or even if it's like, put on those clothes and then give your kids their breakfast or whatever, and then you can go out. But at least you're ready. You're ready to do it. So if you want to learn to cook, get a very basic cookbook, but make sure like all your ingredients are out before you start, or, you know, whatever. Just make it easy for you to do it. And then you're likely to be successful. The success is reinforcing. So, you know, that's something that's also very helpful. Okay. We went over the 2-minute rule, which I think.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
One of my big issues, you know, with organizing in general is that I like to keep too many things out where I can see them. I mean,
Right.
And that was the problem I was having throughout the whole book is, you know, making things visible.
Right.
Because then I'm going to have things all over. And then the flip side of that is that one of the reasons I'm having, this might be rationalization. One of the reasons that I'm not painting as much is that in my big house, I can leave everything out. I had a whole room for my studio and I left the paints out. And now I'm in this little like corner of the living room and my paints are in bins, you know.
Right.
So I don't know how to break through. So there's two issues. One is I keep too much stuff out, but then with my paints, they're not out. You know, I don't know how to get past that. Any thoughts?
That is a tough one. You know, in some ways, yeah, you want everything to be accessible so that you can do it, and also to cue you to do it. Like, oh, you know, like you pass the table, you can't resist, you know, getting into it or whatever. The space is a problem, and wanting your space to look neat when you have something that you want to do that's messy. I mean, painting can be, you know, messy, and things are out. You know, it's the same thing with cooking. You know, it's wonderful to, you know, to have but if you have everything out, then your kitchen doesn't look, you know, like, you know, breathtaking when you walk into it. It's the same thing with sewing. You know, like I used to sew all the time, and, you know, like sewing between the threads and the fabric and trims, and it was a mess. Yeah, and then there's also a difference in, and we'll actually, if you take the quiz that I'll give you the link to when we finish, because next month we're going to do decluttering, and so again, because it's always a popular topic, and we're giving a quiz on the type of clutter you can tolerate or whatever, you know, and there is a big difference between, you know, people who, I'm a kind of a person who likes to keep things out of sight, you know, which can be a benefit or not a benefit. But there are people who, you know, like my husband, who likes visual cues, which makes me crazy, you know. But in your case, it's really a matter of like making it easy and making it visible, both, if the stuff is out. And you know what, it might be a matter of, and because I don't know how big your space is, but it might be a matter of like a Japanese type screen, you know, like to just screen off a corner of the room, you know, because it is a tough call, like to leave stuff out. But of course, the thing is, and it depends on how much it bothers you, because as far as other people go, you're an artist. This is your, you know, you're using this corner of the room as your studio. So deal with it. You know, it's not necessarily like a terrible thing, but, you know, one of the solutions might just be to screen it off, or even just screen it off if somebody's coming, you know, not to, you know, because to put all this stuff away and take it all out and put it, then the thing doesn't happen. You know, the painting doesn't happen if you have to spend, you know, 20 minutes taking stuff out and another, you know, and like 40 minutes putting it away. So I don't know whether that would work for you or not. I don't know what the space is like, but that's a possibility. That's the only one I can think of.
In the pandemic, no one's exactly been coming over.
But I guess the question is, does it bother you? Does it bother you to leave it out? You know, like even let's say you're working on it every day, but you're only working on it for like a limited amount of time. Does it bother you to leave it out until the next day?
In its corner, it doesn't bother me, but if I leave it out by the kitchen, you know, like if I'm cleaning brushes and things like that,
yeah,
because then I'm eating on my brushes, and doing ikebana, Japanese flower arranging, like I'm doing it all on the same counter.
Right.
And then that becomes a problem, you know.
Okay. All right. So basically what you're talking about is like you can leave your corner out, but you know, like, I mean, you just have to acknowledge to yourself, like, why, you know, like this counter has to be clean for eating. So, you know, if I do X, Y, and Z, then I have to like move the stuff when I'm finished or whatever, you know, I mean, it is a problem, and it makes things more difficult. Making things more difficult means that it's less likely we're going to make it a habit, you know. You know, I know that's tough. You know, if it were a matter of like working, like office kind of work, and I don't know if they have anything like this for artists, but I do know that there are places where you can go to work you know, just, you know, like, and like you can go and have an office cubicle or whatever, you know, like, and it's not like you're committed to this, you know, you go back, you go and you leave this, you know, you don't leave this stuff there. But I don't know about, you know, that's not too much different from cleaning up your corner, you know, if you were to go work. I don't know if artists have anything like that, where you have like, you know, you could rent a quarter of a studio or something, you know, but.
I'm renting storage spaces now. I can't afford to rent anything else.
Rent studio space too, yeah.
Yeah, that's not on the table right now.
Yeah. So, okay. All right. Like I said, we talked about our 2-minute rule. You know, I don't know. Like this is one of the reasons I'm big on this topic of habits is that anything we talk about when it comes to like organizing, you know, things, or decluttering things, or time management, a lot of it really hinges on habits. It all boils down to habits. Almost getting anything done, you know, unless you're working on some kind of a short-term project when you've got like lots of gung-ho energy or whatever, getting anything done really, you know, relies a lot on our habits. Okay. And he talks about being successful. Like I had said before, like really take a minute to think, to tell yourself that you are successful, that I was able to do this. I was able to do this 3 days in a row. I was able to do this, you know, for 10 minutes. I was able, you know, whatever. Because if you're changing your behavior, if this behavior you want to change and you're moving in the right direction, you know, that's a reward for yourself to acknowledge that, you know, this is a success. The rest of the world might not think that it's a terrific success, you know, like, you know, you still have a, you know, whatever, long way to go. But for you, you know that you're better this week than last week. And that's, you know, that's a big deal. It is a big deal. It really is. Okay. One of the things in terms of habits, and when I said that everything is, you know, we usually talk about a habit being a daily kind of a thing. You've probably heard the expression, don't break the chain. And there's a lot of people who have kind of talked about this and in different ways. But don't break the chain really came from Jerry Seinfeld, because he decided that you have to have a lot of jokes. If you're going to be a comedian, you have to write jokes every day. And because then you have something to pick from, and you're going to write a lot of terrible jokes, but you're going to write a lot of jokes that are really good. You know, and the more jokes you write, the more likely you are to come up with something that is decent, right? And the thing is, like, you can tell a lot of jokes in 5 minutes. And like, you know, so if you were in a comedy club and you've got a five-minute spot, you need a lot of jokes, and you can't be using the same ones all the time. So he took a calendar and he would write, I don't know if he had to come up with a certain number of jokes or if he had to just have at least one joke or whatever, but he wrote jokes every day, and he put a big X on the calendar when he did. And then the thing is, it became so crucial for him not to break that chain. And it is surprisingly motivating to cross off on the calendar or put a gold star on the calendar, you know, if you do something that day, because you don't want to break that chain. You don't want to have the day that you didn't do it, you know. I mean, you always should be able to feel that you can pick up and start over again, like, because, not to be defeatist, but it's very motivating if you've started your chain, if you've started a chain and you've got a string going and you've done it every day for a month, and now you're into month 2, and like, hey, like, I'm great, and I've got proof on my calendar that we have stars or X's or, hearts or whatever, because I did it every day. So, that's something that, I just feel that's a great motivation, this don't break the chain thing. And you see it from different people at different, worded different, but basically the same thing. Okay. Have any of you heard about accountability partners? Accountability, Susan?
No, I hadn't.
Okay.
I had not heard of that.
Okay, so an accountability partner is like, let's say you want to do something, and it also helps if you have a friend who wants to do something. It doesn't have to be the same thing, but where you're reporting to that person, like at the end of the day or the end of the week, or it probably daily is better. Whether you've progressed on what you're doing, and then that person will tell you whether they progress. Because if you have to report to somebody, even if it's a friend who's agreed to do this, and and who's a good friend who's not going to judge you, but it still is very motivating to actually have somebody to check in with, and so you can be able to say, I did this today, or I didn't do it. And then maybe your friend also can buck you up and say, well, look, tomorrow, what are you going to do tomorrow, or whatever. Some friends, you need a friend who's going to be encouraging to you, not somebody who's going to be very judgmental. But so the accountability partner is really very helpful. I had I want to say it's called Focus, but when I was doing the research on the apps, there's an app where they actually will pair, if you're working. This to me sounds a little bizarre, but I guess for some people it works. If you are going to be working, they pair you up with somebody else who's working, and you're sitting there with your cell phone, and the other person is there, and you basically you set your timer, and you're working on 2 different things. This is a stranger that you don't know, but you're checking in with that person like periodically to say how much you've done or whatever. And this has been shown to be very helpful. And I can't believe it with a stranger, that it would work with a stranger, but apparently it does. In order to get you motivated and to get you working and to get things accomplished. So, but when it comes to forming a new habit, an accountability partner is also can be very helpful. Yeah. What types of habits do people want to change? I mean, not necessarily us, but just in general. I mean, I don't want you all to lay out your, dirty laundry here, but if there's what types of habits do people want to change in general? What habit, the guy down the block, what should his new habit be? Okay. I'm bombing here. I feel like Jerry Seinfeld on a bad day. Let's see. Okay. This was a little bit harder. This is a little bit more complicated for me to take in, but I can understand it. I don't know that I can relate it to my own life quite, but he talks about the Goldilocks factor, the Goldilocks rule, where you need to be functioning where things are a little challenging, but not too challenging. So, not too hot, not too cold. That's why it's a Goldilocks rule. Because, if it's at the right level for your abilities, like if you've picked a goal that's too, or a habit that's too hard for you, it's too difficult for you, it's not going to work. But it's also the same thing with it's too easy. If it's too easy and it's too challenging, then it's boring. So that you should be, but I think I find it harder to, I guess, envision what he's talking about, like a specific kind of a situation. I'm better with saying, okay, you know, like you're going to increase your time on something, or you're going to you know, do it more frequently or whatever. But when it comes to like working at, you know, like the difficulty level, I think that's a little harder, but it's something that, you know, depending on what kinds of behaviors you want to change, that might be really crucial, is to, you know, work at the level where it's challenging, but not overwhelming. So I'm just throwing that out there, but I don't know if any of you can come up with something that's a habit that's in that ballpark, you know, like,
Well,
yeah,
I thought of something with my painting.
uh-huh.
I have a series, well, it's right behind me here. This series that I've been working on, it's a vending series,
Yeah.
okay?
I was gonna say, I've admired it, yes.
Yeah.
On previous Zooms.
Thanks. Well, I'm still doing this series, okay?
Uh-huh.
And the thing is that I'm familiar with it, you know, the black background, the color bars and food and things like that. And it's not formulaic, but there's been a big learning curve and I'm over some of it, right? So I did a lot of food and that really worked well. But then I decided, I mean, the challenging part that I just undertook was I added, I'm doing one with Clorox.
Uh-huh.
The thing is that I'm out of my comfort zone.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so that even though, I don't know, it's a habit, but I'm not comfortable with it.
Uh-huh.
It's not food.
Yeah, right.
So
Right.
it's different. It's like a different subject matter. Like I thought about putting books in there or doing all kinds of things. And I said to myself, no, that's too hard, you know, but it's just different. So for me, it's like changing my subject matter. You know,
Yeah.
like, you know, you're going into something that it isn't quite the same. Or in reading, it would be like, I like just to read fluffy romance novels, right? If all of a sudden I decided to read
War and Peace.
yeah, I was going to say Tolstoy. How did you read my mind? But yeah, I mean, that would be a bigger challenge, or just any kind of historical fiction. So that's how I took that to mean. But I was kind of with you. It's hard to know what that is. Like, I don't really know how hard Clorox is to paint until I started, you know?
Right, yeah. Well, I guess the thing is, do you find it like challenging or do you find it overwhelming? You know, and that's
yeah, no, that's a good point, because staying in the series is very challenging. It's not overwhelming at all. Starting a new series would be overwhelming right now, you know, completely.
Yeah.
I'm writing that down. Challenging versus overwhelming.
But you can start thinking of your new series as a challenge, as a
Well, that's as you're talking, like I realize I have so much reframing to do.
Now you're talking like a social worker. Social workers talk a lot about reframing. So, okay. Okay. So anybody else have a comment on that, like on the idea of, you know, because as far as like our ordinary habits, it didn't seem to fit in so much with what, you know, I had been thinking or what I had been, you know, talking about in terms of like habit formation. But you know, that idea of the challenging, the overwhelming, and the too easy, to that you get, sometimes I don't know that you get bored when something is too easy, but you just don't, you know, you just don't put the effort and the oomph into it, you know.
Well, didn't you already give us an example in a way when you said, well, you'd like to keep, you know, a goal may be to keep the kitchen clean, right? And you do that every night for an hour or do whatever you do. And then if you expand it into another room,
No, that's true. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. Like not to let yourself go crazy, like, oh my house has to look pristine all the time, Yeah, but you can just kind of like carve out a spot and, and I've said this to people sometimes when I've declutter, when I'm when you're decluttering something, like if your whole office is a mess, clear off the desk. Don't worry about the rest of it, like the credenza and the file cabinets, like just take one and then, you make every effort to keep that tidy, and that's the habit, is like to straighten it up. Like when you finish for the day, tidy that space up, and then gradually you can kind of like, expand it to more of the room, but you just try to keep the lid on the one place and keep it under control, so I don't know what else to say about habits. It really, they're just so vitally important to so much of what we do and to so much what you can accomplish in a day. And that, like I said, that even they hit the organization, the time management, almost everything that we talk about in this group, it all really comes back to habits, and to changing your habits. And I think
Yes.
habits are habits. They're comfortable. We live with them, and it's not always easy to add good habits or end the bad habits that we have. Or I don't like to say bad habits, the unhelpful habits that we have that are not, helping us get to where we want to be, where we need to be. Um, you know, I can see where that the trainer, that was it Z, I think was talking about the trainer, like so many habits, so many health issues, behaviors or habits that like look at New Year's Day, that's people are starting all kinds of like healthy habits, and they're trying to get rid of their unhealthy habits. But I don't like to say bad habits personally, but some people say, I mean, it doesn't, it's, no judgment. If bad habits is how, you talk about it, that's fine. So anybody else have anything to say about habits they would like to change, or habits they would see in somebody else that should be changed, or any other questions you have? All right. Well, we still have about 20 minutes. I'd like to talk a little bit then, if we're done with this, about next month, because Z and I have talked a little about this, and Z sent me a quiz that I took about your kind of like your decluttering style. Okay, decluttering here has always been a very popular topic of conversation, because everybody has stuff they need to get rid of. It's not easy to do. We've gone over, and like even though we repeat ourselves a lot on this, I mean, I think it's important because it's tough. But anyway, so we, if you take the quiz and we'll
Give honest answers.
yeah give honest answers, and you really learn a little bit about yourself, I think. So, and then what we're going to do is when we come back next month, we'll just talk about decluttering in general. You bring any issues that you have that you need help addressing. I'm sure some of the things that we discuss will have been discussed before. There's always different people in the group, so it's new to some people, not new to other people. But I also like to hear about your successes. Like if you have a particular problem, maybe the group can help you with it. And if you've had some successes, that also encouraging to the rest of us. So anyway, so that's what we would be talking about, next month.
Dr. Pat, we also did discuss that we take the quiz and then we have a problem area. So let's say we have a dresser or a closet or a desk, and we take pictures of what it looks like, and then we can send them to you or myself ahead of time, and then we can try to offer solutions about how, based on your clutter style, to make the modifications, because I really do feel that that's beneficial. So if people are willing, like if they don't want to share it to the whole group, that's fine. You know, if you're brave enough to, and we don't have to single out people, we can just say these are photos that we received, and this is a person's problem area, and they're identifying as a butterfly or as a, they call it clutter bug. So there's all these different type of bugs, dragonflies, butterflies, etc., ladybugs. So whatever style you most identify with, then there are different visuals or different systems that are suggested to help, right, Dr. Pat?
Yes, yeah.
So that might be a little helpful, getting the visual in there and understanding what is going on and what area you want to apply this to.
Yeah. So anyway, but that's what we have in mind for next month. So, and like I said, decluttering is usually a very popular topic, because we all, even if you're a neatnik and even if you do like regular decluttering, there's always spaces that that need help. I don't think any of us can say that we're completely, none of us are minimalists, I don't think. So I heard that there's a book, I think, called 100 Things or something. And like this guy is trying to live, like pare down his stuff so he only lives with 100 things. That sounded like really kind of like tough, 100 things in your life. So anyway, yeah, so and actually I'm going to ask also if are there any suggestions for things you'd like us to cover in the group?
Right, because we were thinking of taking a break in July and August for the summer, correct?
Yes.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think we have before.
I don't know, do we want to? Like, this is another thing that needs to be discussed.
Yeah.
What are people's feelings?
I'm on a roll with this stuff. I hate to break it. You know what the book says, don't break the chain.
Hey, right, I was just going to say, don't break the
chain.
Yeah.
But then I might be the only one around that isn't going anywhere. So.
I don't know. Well, some of us are not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't mind doing it every month.
Okay.
Thing is, it gets some of the topics maybe get a little, repetitive or whatever. I think we've covered so many things over the years. It's, but I enjoy the group.
Pat, I'm a newbie. I think I might be less than a year already, So you could recycle old decluttering topics and I would have never heard them before. I don't know. I kind of feel with this that you hear what you need to hear at the point you are in your life. Okay. And that, 2 years ago, I would have listened for different things, or even 6 months ago, I'm listening for different things.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you want a holiday, you're entitled. But if you keep going, I'll be here.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think it seems like we've kind of exhausted this. I don't know if you want to close early, or, I mean, I'm open to talk about any topics that related to organization at all. If anybody would like to weigh in here and ask questions or make suggestions or,
Well, I'd like to go back to something you said before. I look at this book and I tell you it's life-changing and I still don't know where to start. Like you said, you suggested introducing one new habit at a time, but how long, do you let it go? Is it one habit for a week, 2 weeks, a month? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think when you feel it's a habit, when you feel that it's something that you would do almost without thinking, and I think that's where habit chaining really helps. Like, so, you know, if you have your breakfast and then you walk the dog or something, you know, like then that becomes an everyday you do, well, that's a habit you've got, you know, that you're in, and it's established. Where, you know, if you link things together, that tends to happen more readily, that you just go from one to the other without thinking about it. You know, it's really incredibly helpful to start a new habit by saying like every day after lunch, or, you know, on my way home from work every day, or, you know, something like that. It becomes, that's how it becomes a habit. And then, you know, so there really is no time, necessarily a time frame. It depends on how much time you can give it. Sometimes it depends on circumstances, you know, like, okay, you've begun to establish a habit, and then there's like, you know, a week-long power outage or something, like, which throws everything off, and, you know, like you don't make any progress on that. So I think, so you might want, I really don't think it's good to start, you know, 2 or 3 new habits at the same time. I think it is good to try to establish one and get it going, and, you know, feel fairly comfortable with it before you take on something new.
What do you do about the fact, so I don't have a formal job, so I don't have any routine per se. Like there's certain things that are driving, you know, they're driving my days, such as like my goal was to do Qigong 4 or 5 days a week, but the classes are all at different times. So today I was 9:30 outside in person, Saturdays 8:30, Mondays 3 o'clock. So like I'm finding it difficult to come up with that statement, well, I'm going to do Qigong after it's different every day, you know.
Okay, so I'm assuming this is some kind of an exercise. I'm not familiar with it.
Oh
So
yeah, it's like Tai Chi or, you know, yoga, and it's all in the same.
okay. Is it something you can do on your own or not?
I'm not doing so well on my own, so I decided to try the classes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, the thing is, because I'm saying if your goal was to do it like 5 times a week,
Yeah.
right? So the thing is that if you could do it, you know, like you could take a couple of classes, but then maybe you'd want to take it, because you ordinarily something like that might be better at the same time every day, but it doesn't sound like that works for you. Okay. But you know what? One of the things that you could do is, if is to put the five times you're going to do it into a calendar at the beginning of the week. You know, like, so if you have, you know, like a day planner or something, you know, you put it in, and then you can work your other things around that, you know, but schedule it so that it's on the schedule, and that's it, and that's when you're going, and that's when you're doing it, you know. And maybe the only other exception would be like if it's pouring rain on a day you're supposed to be outdoors for your class, well, that's a wash. But, you know, like otherwise, you know, you've got the five dates in your calendar, and that's what's gonna happen, you know. And the same thing with painting. You might want to schedule, you know, whatever you think is an appropriate period of time. You know, I don't know how much time you want to spend at a time, like, because I'm sure you could paint for hours. You might not want to paint for like, you know, 20 minutes because of the setup and the cleanup. But you might want to, whatever time you want to spend, I think that's another thing you could put in the calendar.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that would be the habit, would be to schedule these things and then to follow through on when they're scheduled.
Now there's a topic, following through.
Well, you know what? You can give yourself a gold star for the day if you've done the things on your calendar. And I wouldn't load up the calendar, but like, you know, if you have 3 or 4 things on your calendar each day, and you do each of them, you know, things that you've scheduled that you want to do, and you do each of them, that's a gold star for the day, or 4 gold stars, or whatever, you know.
Yeah. Now there's this gap right now too between what I'm putting on the calendar and what I actually do. The other thing, there's a gap between what I really need to do and what's making it onto the calendar. Like I'm not putting on the things that I don't want to do, you know. It's like,
Yeah. can't help you there.
Yeah, no, but it's, I think, I mean, I was thinking about a future topic, and for me, it's just setting the priorities.
Yeah.
And like I think you need to work on big things and little things at the same time. But when I'm working on a big thing, I don't want to do the little things, and it's just it's really interesting from that perspective.
Very often the little things are the things that we almost like have to do every day. And those are the things that can be routinized, you know, and can be, you know, habits. So we always do X, Y, and Z as soon as we get up. We always do X, Y, and Z before we go to bed. We always do X, Y, and Z after lunch or whatever. And, you know, and then the other things that, you know, you think are priorities, then that's a matter of like, you know, finding an optimal time, scheduling for them the optimal time. So yeah, that's something we can, you know, and we all struggle with that. You know, I can talk a good game, but, you know, does that mean I always do it? No. You know, but it's, you know, just like James Clear talked about the process being important, you know, and to develop some kind of a process that works for you, so that you can get these things done. That's helpful.
Okay.
So, but I wrote that down, setting priorities. So that's something that I'll think about as a topic. It won't be next month, but maybe the month after, whatever. I do try to write down after these meetings, I write down suggestions that people have, because I'd like to be responsive, and you know, talk on topics that people are interested in and have expressed an interest in. So okay. Anyone else have a suggestion for a future meeting?
How about Pat? A couple of people have emailed me or texted me saying that if different people that you're dealing with, either if it's in a living situation or a working situation, that have different styles of organizing or different styles of working, you know, so how to kind of merge or make things work when there's more than one person involved. Because let's say you're running a household or you're in a partnership, and you're trying to get things to be a certain way, how to kind of jointly like buy in and that kind of thing.
I mean, I know that that's the kind of thing that I talk about all the time, that my husband likes, you know, I've said this, he likes visual cues, and I like things hidden away, like, you know, and you know, I think we make each other crazy at that time. And I've often said lately that if we get two newspapers delivered, you know, every day, and John likes to read every word in every paper, and so I've said to people that, you know, if I were to die, I'd be afraid that the house begins to look like Collier's mansion, because the papers just like pile up. On, you know, like, because he's working his way through them, you know, so it's a different style. So yes, I think that that's a very relevant topic. Whether I have any answers is another whole issue, but I can do that. I can research that and find out. But yeah, it is. You know, it's also, people have very different levels in terms of what they can you know, like, are comfortable with in terms of clutter. You know. Than other people. So yeah, we can discuss that. So that's a good suggestion. I will put them on my list. But next month we are circling back to decluttering, everybody's favorite.
Mary Nowak from the library at Crestwood said that the person who did this system actually has a TV show. We have to look into that.
Which
On
system?
HGTV, the Clutterbug system.
Oh, okay.
The one that we're going to encourage people to take the test and then discuss
yeah.
our results. And so that could be something looking into, and then we could send out the workbook also that we can download, that's downloadable, that people can take a look at.
Okay.
That could be kind of interesting. And I really do hope that people take advantage and take some photos of things they need help with.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Dr. Pat.
Okay.
It's always wonderful to be together on Zoom and together with you and with our organizing community, because usually
Yeah.
well, it's a type of wellness community, this too. We try to be
Yeah.
well with our stuff, right?
Yeah, well, I think it's better, it's good for your well-being to be in an, an organized environment, or like something that's calming, but not everybody, I guess, finds that, some people are very calm in the midst of their clutter, but like it makes me, antsy. So I want to thank you for coming, everyone who joined us and who contributed, and I hope to see you all next month. You will get I will send out a handout. I do have handouts that habits handouts I'll send along, and information on our next session. Okay.
Okay,
right,
thank
so
you very
thanks
much.
Yeah,
Okay.
Thank you.
thanks
Thank
for
you.
recommending the
Good
book.
seeing you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We will do another book group some other time. Okay. Thank you.
All
Bye-bye.
right, be
you.
well, everybody.
Good
Be
night.
well, stay well.